Hey again, everyone. It's Rob Ryder, and it's Sunday, August 7th, 2022. And today I'm reaching out to constitutional sheriffs to say, Constitutional Sheriff, call 911. That's the answer. Because political disenfranchisement and public officer impersonation are ongoing crimes and acts of terrorism. So declare an emergency management local state of emergency man-made disaster. And this all comes because I had a conversation recently with a constitutional sheriff who, I had sent some information to, and he admitted that he hadn't taken the oath that satisfies the sixth article of the Constitution. And he also admitted that he believed he needed to. And then I went into some of the other things that were wrong. And he said, well, shit, there's a lot of stuff wrong. And so what do we do about it? And at the time I said, well, why don't you, contact the military? Which I hadn't been the first time I heard that. But now I've looked at it a little bit more since then. I'm saying, no, you don't even need to do that, Sheriff. You can do it yourself because somehow you're in emergency management. And all you needed to do is declare an emergency management, local state of emergency, man-made disaster to make an official record of the situation. And now they're going to have to deal with it. But right now you're trying to go through the state, what you believe to be the state, where I've shown you and what I've sent you, that the governor didn't take the proper oath of office. Right, even the oath of office she took wrong. And that whenever she does like an executive order, the seal that they're putting on the document is a fucking counterfeit of the Great Seal of the state of Michigan. It's as plain as fucking day. All you got to do is look at it. Look at the document, look at the seal, read the law, tell me I'm wrong. Well, of course, they can't. Never happened. Right? Because I'm just saying, well, this is what it says here, and that isn't what it says there. So until they can explain the difference, I am correct. And so are you, Sheriff. And the difference is now you got authority that I don't have, so I'm asking you to use it. At the same time, I'm going to say this, now that I've said that about sheriffs. Look, if you have a court case going on right now, I say you should call 911 and say that the person acting as the judge and the person acting as the prosecutor have not taken an oath of office to satisfy the Constitution of the United States, and they're impersonating public officers. Period. You need to have it investigated. Right? And then whatever else ask. The idea is to make it official. And this is the whole thing. 911 is not state or local. It's run by the federal government. Right? It's through the common carrier, and that has certain laws that apply to the common carrier. And, it's the official phone number to call for an emergency. Well, so now what's an emergency? Well, one of the things that is considered an emergency is an ongoing crime. So if you knew of an ongoing crime or act of terrorism, well, you should be able to call it in. Right? You, me, everybody else. And so I plan on doing this myself real soon. I'm just going through it now to make this record. Hopefully that a sheriff will do it or not even bother with the phone call if he doesn't need to. Just put on your emergency management hat and declare the state of emergency. Because neither you nor anybody else as a county officer has taken a proper oath of office, has properly been registered as a qualified elector in the county so that you could run for office. And it goes on and on and on. I mean, all the stuff that has happened is well documented. And so we're going to look at the documentation. That's what I like to do. I'd like to look at the paper, have the paper speak, or I just speak for the paper. But the paper is the memorial to the event. So let's get on with it. Again, I am Staff Sergeant Robert Allen Berluski, U.S. Army veteran, also known as Rob Ryder. My email address is courtofrecord@aol.com, and my phone number is 616-712-6179. So if you're a constitutional sheriff, just give me a call and we can talk about it. Or, have one of your people call. We can set up a time, whatever. But I'm going to show you the problem with trying to show you something or tell you something on the phone is I can't show the documents. And the only way to do that is, thankfully, I can do it by video. So one quote I pulled out of something from off of Wikipedia about political disenfranchisement. It said it ended with the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which authorized the federal government to monitor voter registration practices in elections where populations were historically underrepresented and to enforce constitutional voting rights. Okay, so I'm saying we're not, because neither the sheriff or anyone else or us has been allowed to register as a qualified elector in our local government election precinct, that our vote doesn't count for elections. It may count for a popularity contest, but only electors get to vote, right? In elections. And the only way you can be a qualified registered elector is if you go before some person and you swear a freaking form out, right, that has an affidavit on it. Well, when you go to register to vote, you don't swear to anything, right? So it's a separate registration. It's really this simple. It's just a separate registration that you have to do first before you can register to vote. First, you need to register as an elector, which is somebody over the age of 18, 21, whatever it is. You know, it should be 18. I'm going to show you in the Constitution. It says 21. So which one do we go with? You know, on and on and on. But this is, you know, that they can do this. And so we are being politically disenfranchised by a man-made disaster that has everybody who should have authority under the Constitution powerless because they didn't take a proper oath of office. They can't even, you know, give anybody an oath. But the military can, because they can still give people oaths, and we may have to go to them. Okay, enough with the preamble. Let's go. Let's see what we got. Hang on. So real quick, Constitutional Sheriff, if you went to my site on YouTube, which is Rob Ryder, ROBBBRYDER, and looked at Avery, his Supreme Law of the Land, we'll show you in more detail, something I'm going to show you in just a second. But also, if you went back as far as Sheriff Darleaf, don't use Esquires, right? Don't sue Esquires, which he's trying to do. Arrest them for treason. You know, you would get a better understanding of the things they're talking about now. And if you were to look at these ones I did on traffic citations, you would see that the form that you're sending your officers out to use as traffic tickets have been counterfeited or forged. What's the proper word when you change the, you change the form? And they have all sorts of errors and omissions on them. And so I don't want to have to blame the deputy who's handing the ticket out, but I'm going to blame the people that are sending them out with that ticket because somebody altered a state form. And nobody seems to care. That's what these videos are about. Okay, continuing on. And we have to go through a few things that we're all on the same page, right? So this is the 6th article out of the Constitution of the United States, right, where it says the Constitution, or this Constitution, and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and treaties made, or which shall be made, under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land, and judges in every state shall be bound thereby, things in the Constitution and laws of any state to the contrary, notwithstanding. Right? So if the Constitution of the United States says you need to do it, it doesn't matter what anybody else tells you. You need to do what it says. And the Constitution of the United States says that the senators and representatives before mentioned and members of several state legislatures and all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and the several states, that would include sheriffs, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution, but no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. So as I showed the constitutional sheriff that contacted me, right, if you go look at the congressional record for this last Congress and look for when they did their oath of office, you'll see they did do an oath of office, but that oath of office has a phrase in it that says, "So help me God." Well, that's a religious test. So that cannot be the oath that satisfies the 6th article of the Constitution. It doesn't mean they can't take it. It just isn't the oath that satisfies the 6th article of the Constitution. That oath was written into a different law. All right, so this is one of those laws in the United States the Constitution talked about, that the act of the first Congress, the very first law of the United States signed into law by President Washington, said that the oath or affirmation required by the 6th article of the Constitution of the United States shall be administered in the form following, to wit, IAB, that'd be your name, Robert Allen Ratluski, full legal name, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States. Right? There's no "so help me God" on there or anything else. That oath right there. Now, when the constitutional sheriff that I sent this to read this, he understood immediately what it meant. Right? He didn't need no fucking esquire to tell him, well, I need to take this oath to satisfy the Constitution of the United States. You know, it was plain as fucking day. Okay, well, how do I do it? Right? I mean, he wants to do it. Well, good. The problem is there may be some other things that need to be done also. It just isn't the oath. Because before you could run for office, you had to be a registered qualified elector of the county. And you're not, and neither am I, and this is the problem. We're registered as voters at the township, but we're not registered as qualified electors of the election district of our local government, which now is the county because of this case, which was Avery versus Midland County, right? You can Google that right there. You'll be looking at the same thing. It's easy to find, right? So basically, Midland County, Texas, Commissioners Court, which is the same today as the board of, or the county commissioners together as a board, right? They're making a court. It consisted of 5 members and, right, 4 commissioners. So 1 elected judge and 4 commissioners, which they were also called precincts. Now, these precincts one had 76,000, one had 824 or 414.28. So somebody complained and said, look, this isn't equal protection, right? It violates the Equal Protection Clause, 14th Amendment. Well, the frickin' Supreme Court agreed. And so because of this, what we used to use in Michigan as the county township form of local government was no longer valid because that was based on territory, not on population. Because it went on to say that held on the basis of substantially equal populations. Local units with general government powers over entire geographical area may not consistently with the Equal Protection Clause, 14th Amendment, be apportioned among single-member districts of substantially unequal populations. Right? So the county used to be governed in Michigan by the Board of Supervisors, which was the supervisors of all the townships. But because of this, and because the townships aren't equally populated, well, we got to go to something else. And they created county commissioners and split the county into districts. And so I'm in the 4th district of Kent County. That is now my election precinct, not Oakfield Township Precinct 1. Right? I need to register as a qualified elector, which means I have to do an affidavit before an officer of the registration clerk for the Kent County jurisdiction, which I believe is the Kent County clerk, or the person we try to call the county clerk of Kent County. Right? She wears 2 hats. The county is an organized county, but it's also at the same time it was made into a municipal corporation, no different than a city. And so just real quick, the opinion of the court was that the Equal Protection Clause reaches the exercise of state power, whether exercised by the state or a political subdivision. And although the state legislature may itself be properly apportioned, the 14th Amendment requires that citizens not be denied equal representation in political subdivisions, which also have broad policy-making functions. The Commissioners' Court performs some functions normally thought of as legislative and others typically characterized in other terms, but regardless of the labels, this body has the power to make large number of decisions having a broad impact on all citizens of the county. Though the Midland County Commissioners may concentrate their attention on rural roads, their decision also affects citizens of the city of Midland. Therefore, they had to do what they were told, right? Got to split it up evenly by population, not by territory or some other criteria. Has to be by population in order to satisfy the 14th Amendment, and there's just nothing that can be done to change that. And so this law then became a supreme law of the land because it's saying the Constitution says this, right? That because the Equal Protection Clause is in there, that is unconstitutional to have it any other way. Right? In fact, if you look at your state constitution, right, these are all going to have a lot of the same stuff in it. So, equal protection. No person shall be denied the equal protection of the laws, nor shall any person be denied the enjoyment of his civil or political rights or be discriminated against and exercise thereof because of religion, race, color, and national origin. The legislation shall implement this section by appropriate legislation. So I don't know how they did that, but I'm being denied equal protection laws because I cannot register in the division of the county that's been, that was made by population. That made the county the local government instead of, what used to be the township. That one little law. I want to show also, it says in our Constitution, every person has the right to keep and bear arms for the defense of himself and the state. So they're trying to change the federal Constitution and so forth, but as far as your state's concerned, there's nothing they can say about it anyways. Privilege writ of habeas corpus. I believe this has been suspended. See, I really believe we've been under martial law since 1863, and the proof of it is that there are no writs of habeas corpus being acknowledged. They may take them, but I've never seen anybody or heard of anybody who's ever got their habeas corpus to get them out of the situation they're in. And I've had a lot of people tell me they tried. It didn't do any good. Right? So if you know anybody who did, I really like to see it. Because whatever they did, that's what everybody else should do. Right? The one that worked, just follow suit and put your name in it and do the same thing. But I don't think it ever happened. Right? You should be able to try in court. You should be able to use your full legal name as your proper person. They don't let you do that. They make you show up to court as what's the term they use? Pro se. And pro se is not proper person. Right? Pro se is you representing yourself, but it isn't you as yourself. It's what the attorney does. He represents himself. Okay, I wanted to real quick. Hang on a second. This is what I really want to show, this thing on local governments, right? That, right, each organized county shall be a body corporate with powers and immunities provided by law. Well, it's already a political subdivision of the state, so it's actually a body corporate, body politic, right? Kent County, which is an organized county of Michigan, is both a body corporate, so it's like a municipality, same as a city, and it's also a political subdivision. Right? So it can easily be the local government, and so it is. Well, in there, then we have, let's talk about sheriffs, right? The officers we're talking about. The sheriff may be required by law to renew his security periodically, and in default of giving such security, his office shall be vacant. The county shall never be responsible for his acts except that the Board of Supervisors, which is now the county commissioners, we'll see why in just a second, may protect him against claims by prisoners for unintentional injuries received while in his custody. He shall not hold any other office except in civil defense. Well, civil defense is now emergency management. And it's not the civil defense of Michigan, it's the civil defense of the United States. Right? It's a federal office. And that's why I'm saying, sheriff, put on your federal hat. Because even if you're not necessarily the constitutional sheriff, because you ain't got the paperwork done, right? If you've been appointed as the somehow in the emergency management scheme of things, well, then you're using that power anyways. And you're going to use that power to help you get into your proper seat as a county officer, right? As the sheriff. Right, now this is the thing that changed, right? It used to be that a board of supervisors shall be established in each organized county consisting of one member of each organized township and such representation from cities as provided by law. Well, this is the part that's unconstitutional. It says right here, the section held invalid under federal constitution. Well, that would mean it's unconstitutional. Because we don't have board of supervisors anymore. Now we have county commissioners. So they didn't change the Constitution. It's all talked about in this advisory opinion that I showed in my last video. I'm not going to go through it all again. But, they just acted like, okay, well, we know it happened, but we're not going to do anything about the Constitution. We'll just do a few things in the law, and then, we'll take care of it that way. They just, didn't ever tell anybody. Or if they did, we're talking 1968, I wasn't really paying attention. I was 10 years old. I may have missed that meeting at the county building. Yeah, on and on and on. That's the biggest thing. So, okay, so we can see constitutionally what's going on. right? And then, so a lot of what I'm showing obviously applies to Michigan, but it's the same all over, or it's generally the same. So in Michigan, we have a thing called the Michigan Manual that's on the state legislator website, and in there it talks about systems of local governments and how we have all these different ones, right? You got 83 counties are local governments, 100 or 1242 townships are local governments. All these are different forms of local government. So which one is my local government that I need to be registered in? Well, as it turns out, it's the counties because of what the Supreme Court said. And if you go down here, so okay, we used to have the county township fulfilled the requirement in the first premise. Township resulted from the imagination of Thomas Jefferson when he sponsored, as part of the Northwest Ordinance enacted by the Continental Congress, the provision that the Northwest Territory should be surveyed into 6x6 square areas. He wanted local government in the territory to be patterned by the town meeting system of New England. Each of these surveyed areas, he said, could become an elementary republic. When the settlers from the east came to the west, he began organizing them, the governments, So, he wanted to do it by townships. Well, that's now been determined to be unconstitutional. So we have this other form. The Constitution, the county system of government, was imported from England, but modified by individual states to fit the needs and circumstances. Michigan borrowed and adapted the New York model. The counties became an overlay of the government, right? An overlay has its own jurisdiction, and it's sitting over everything else, right? So this is the, well, what would it be? I'm just going to say it's the supreme law of the land, right? Because that's what the county is in. It's in the supreme law of the land jurisdiction, through which the state could effectively manage the vast territory. Because the division of the state into counties is just the state government locally. It's still the state government. Having a system of such outposts as essential during the time when transportation and laborious communications was slow. Well, now 911 took care of that. A compromise developed in the New York state ultimately resolved the same problem here in Michigan. How to select the governing body of the county board. Right? The New York Compromise made township supervisors members of the county board of supervisors. It was also so in Michigan as well until 1968, when, as an outgrowth of the one person, one vote decision of the 1960s, the state legislature created the county commissioner system of county representation. Under this plan, commissioners are directly elected from the districts within the county. Their ties to the townships and cities are considerably less than they were under the supervisor system. Correct. Have nothing to do with it. It's its own system. Through these two forms of local government, right, two separate forms, Michigan had a two-tiered network of government. State officials had their counterpart officer at the county and township level, through which the state laws could be enforced. Birth, death records maintained, roads built, land records recorded, tax collected, and the like. This two-tiered system turned out to be one of which could meet the governing needs of rural areas as well. So that's enough, right? So my point is, the county is a local government. And so the Kent County clerk needs to register me in this general duty local government. Because it's not a special district or some authority, it's just something that has jurisdiction over one or two things. No, it's general over all sorts of things. Okay, had a slight interruption there, but back. So done with local governments. I have to cover these things just so we're all in the same sheet of music. I showed one stat 23 already. Well, that I had later. So this would be in the United States statutes at large. And it's called One Stat, STAT 23. And if you could find that book and look at page 23, that's where you'd find this act in. First act passed at the ratification of the Constitution. Well, later it was codified, right, and put into the code, United States Code under Title IV, which is flag, seal, seat of government, and the states. We're in 101. It's got the exact same oath. Every member of the state legislature, every executive judicial officer of a state, well, that would be a judge. Executive officer, well, that'd be a county prosecutor, sheriff. You can name a whole bunch of them. Shall, before he proceeds to execute the duties of his office, take the oath in the following form, to wit, I state your name, do solemnly swear I will support the Constitution of the United States. So either way, they have to take it. And then it goes on in 102, though, it says that such oath may be administered by any person who, by law of the state, is authorized to administer the oath of office, and a person so administering such oath shall cause a record or certificate therefore to be made in the same manner as by law of the state he is directed to record or certify the oath of office. Well, he has to do that before he proceeds to execute the duties of his office. So if he doesn't already have one, then it's too late. Whatever he did before that technically didn't happen under the Constitution. And so since nobody has done these things properly except the military, it may be the military that needs to administer the oaths to start with to get us back on track. All I'm saying is if you have a court case going on, you need to understand this right here says that judge doesn't have this oath. He's not a judge of the state, and that makes it impersonation of a state officer because they're acting like they're trying to enforce the laws of the state. And, I don't know that a constitutional sheriff has to do it this way, but for the rest of us, if you want to get the oath of somebody who's supposed to have an oath from the state office, then as a state officer, or even as a county officer, they're still supposed to, the county is just a subdivision of the state. So either you get it from the county election office or you get it from the state election office. Right? So that's what I did. So I wrote to this Michigan Department of State who handles, elections, asking for the oaths of office for Gretchen Whitmer for the office of governor of the state of Michigan and its commander-in-chief. To which I got a reply, right, from the Secretary of State, apparently. Well, she didn't use my middle name, which is, what they do. That's not my full legal name, so forth and so on. But this is the oath that they sent. Now, I asked for all oaths, and this is the only one they sent me. So this is the only oath she has, which isn't the oath that was in 1 Stat 23 or 4 USC 101. So it's not the oath I'm talking about. Right? Even though she did this one, she didn't do the one she was supposed to. Or the other one that she had to do, right? The one for the federal Constitution. If it's believed this is the one that satisfies the state Constitution, it doesn't mean you don't do the one for the federal Constitution because it's the supreme law of the land. And then when she did it wrong because she didn't use her full legal name, right? Her name is Gretchen Esther Whitmer, not Gretchen Whitmer. And she did it before a notary, which according to MCL 1536 and MCL 1537, depending, you got to read them kind of like together, right? That a notary cannot administer an oath to the governor. Right? So it was done wrong. But nobody seems to care, right? Well, this would be a reason then, and this will be the reason I do. I call 911. I'm going to tell them that Whitmer doesn't have a proper oath of office. So what that means to us then is, well, you go find your state's penal code or criminal code, whatever they want to call it, or you use the federal code. Because Title 18, find something in there that you're going to say that it violates. Right? But in this case, it's, false personation. Right? False representation as a peace officer or medical examiner. Right? It's a crime. Well, a sheriff is supposed to be a peace officer. But if, because he's a conservator of the peace. But he's only a conservator of the peace if he took the proper oath to be the sheriff, right? So otherwise, hey, it's, false representation. Sorry to tell you, Sheriff. Right? As used in this section, peace officer means any of the following. A sheriff or deputy sheriff of the county of this state or any other state. And then we go from there. Right? Well, that's just the start of it. This has to do with all sorts of false representations or personations, but the one I'm going to go to is 75217C, right? So MCL 75217C if you're in the state of Michigan, where it talks about legal process, impersonation, false representation, and so forth and so on. And it says a person shall not impersonate, falsely represent himself or herself as, or falsely act as a public officer or public employee, and prepare, issue, serve, execute, or otherwise act to further the operation of any legal process or unauthorized process that affects or purports to affect person or property. Well, that would be if you're doing something that affects me and saying that you're a public officer and you didn't take the oath of office, well, it's an impersonation. You're in violation of this section. It's an ongoing crime. Therefore, I can use 911 to call in the crime. And again, this isn't just Gretchen Esther Whitmer. This is the guy that's in the traffic court trying to say, well, you got to answer this traffic citation. Right? And then you look at the ticket and it says like 61st District Court on it. And you say, but wait, Michigan only has one district court. It says so in the law. There shall be one district court. And it's split into, districts. What do they call them? Judicial districts of the district court. So why maybe like in the 63rd Judicial District, it doesn't have its own court. There's only one court. There's no 63rd District Court in Michigan. And to say there is means it's impersonation, false representation, and simulation of a legal process. Now, there's all these same kind of laws, and under Title 18, and so most of you who follow me know, you can look at Title 18. It's the criminal code for the federal government. Well, 911 is federal, so you could, call in a federal crime. Doesn't matter where it's happening, right? And all that happened under the Wireless Communication and Public Safety Act of 1999, wherein it says. Right about here, the coordination and integration of emergency communications with traffic control management systems and designation of 911 as the number to call in emergencies throughout the nation. Not just the state, wherever it is, right? This is a national issue. And then and then 911 directs it to wherever it needs to go to. So 911 really isn't run by the county. The county creates or any jurisdiction that has the requirements that would require them to be in the 911, right? They've created this, like an organization to handle it, right? So where is that one? I got an example here. Right, Berry County Central Dispatch 911. All you got to do is take the name of a county and put 911 behind it, and then find the one that's yours in case there's more than one Berry County, which there was. But hey, here's the building. Right, the place exists. It's the place, the siren testing and all the other things. This is what civil defense became. Right, this is that other office that a sheriff can have. And where was that at? It was in the Constitution. Right, where it said that he shall not hold any other office except civil defense. Right, that's defense of the nation. And so all you got to do, Sheriff, is have the other hat. And so as you can see, this is berry911.org, right? It's not .gov. It's not in the sheriff's department. Right, this is it's an organization of some kind, right, that's been given, it was organized and then given certain powers, and it's in control of this national system of 911, which is used to report emergencies, where an emergency is defined as an ongoing crime, which is what's happening because we can't register to vote, or you're going before a judge that didn't take an oath of office, or, whatever it is. I'm just saying we need to be calling 911, turning this shit in. But about us, so, let's take a look. You got an administrative board. Okay, well, who's on the board? You got the fire, the BOC. Don't know who that is exactly. But you got the sheriff. Hey, there's Darleaf. Right? You got Michigan State Police. You got EMS, City of Hastings. Got a whole bunch of people on this board that run 911. Which, again, is part of the federal system. And along with it is emergency management. Right? The mission of Berry County Emergency Management Department is to protect the lives and property of the citizens before disaster strikes through preparedness, training, and mitigation, and to reduce human suffering after a disaster strikes. Well, we're already there, through prompt and effective coordination of the county response and recovery efforts utilizing the expertise and resources of federal, state, local agencies, and voluntary relief organizations. What is emergency management? It is an organized effort to mitigate against, prepare to respond to, recover from an emergency. That's pretty simple to understand. Okay, I didn't get to cover this part as well as I wanted. So this is the Michigan election law. If we go to page 37 in Michigan, right, it's an act, so this act happens to be, how many pages long is this thing? 289 pages of election law. So apparently there's a lot being said in here. But on page 53, we will see what it takes to be, that's actually 53. Let's see. Sorry about that. It's actually page 37, right? Chapter 10, prosecuting attorney, sheriff, county clerk, these are all county officers. A person shall not be eligible to the office of, and there's the sheriff, if the person is not a registered and qualified elector of the county in which election is sought by filing deadline. It didn't say registered qualified elector of a township. It said of the county. Well, that ain't happened yet. And then, okay, and so then if the county officer is elected and it's been certified, he should get a certificate of election. And the county clerk may cause a copy of the certificate of determination together with the statement of votes cast at the election for the officer to be published in at least one newspaper. I wonder if any of that happened. Sheriff, do you have a copy of a certified certificate of election? So the clerk shall file in his or her office and preserve the original statement of determination of the Board of County Canvassers as a result of the election and shall immediately execute and cause to be delivered to the persons declared elected to the office named in section 200, that will include the sheriff, a properly certified certificate of election certified by him or her under the seal of the county. The county clerk may cause a copy of the certificate of determination together with blah, 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 blah. Right? Now that said certificate of determination. That'll be in the newspaper. But there's supposed to be a certified certificate of election given to everybody who got an office under Section 200. And by God, if they ain't got it, it's an emergency. Okay, county office term of office. Yeah, well, from July next or whatever it looks like. County oath of office. Okay, every person elected under 200, sheriff, before entering upon duties of his office, when, before, shall take and subscribe the oath as provided in Section 1 of Article 11 of the state constitution, and with exception of prosecuting attorney, shall give bond in the amount and manner prescribed by law, and shall deposit said oath with the county clerk and the said bond with the county treasurer. All right, so where is their oath? Well, it's with the county clerk. And they're talking about the same oath that Whitmer took that's supposed to be in our Constitution, right? This is all local for Michigan, so yada, yada, yada. But then it goes on to say, well, how is a vacancy created? The office of county clerk, and all of them again, in any county of the state shall become vacant upon the happening of any of the following: death of incumbent, his resignation, removal of office for cause, ceasing to be a resident of the county in which his office is located, his conviction as of an infamous crime or an offense involving the violation of his oath of office, the decision of a competent tribunal declaring his election to be or appointment to be void. Well, that would be the county election commission, right? His refusal or neglect to take and subscribe to the constitutional oath of office and deposit the same in the manner and within the time prescribed by law, or his refusal or neglect to give bond in the amount and manner within the time prescribed by law. Well, now this said constitutional oath of office. And this one talked about the oath provided in Section 101 of the state constitution. It didn't say it was a constitutional oath. It just said it was in there, right? But the one that says to satisfy the frickin', I already took him down, right? To satisfy the 6th article of the Constitution, right, is the 101 Stat 23. And so, whether you say, well, they took this oath, that's the oath they're talking about, this one, Section 1 of Article 11, we should go ahead and just take a look at it. So this is the oath in Michigan, right? It's all officers, legislative, executive, judicial, before entering upon duties of their respective office, shall take and subscribe the following oath or affirmation. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this state, and I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of, according to the best of my ability. No other oath, affirmation, or any religious test shall be required as a qualification for any office or public trust. Well, they can't say that for the United States because the United States already passed its own law. So either this is unconstitutional or this is an addition to. Right? So, but that's the oath they're supposed to take. Now, if you look at this one, where it has in here, and the Constitution of this state, all in lowercase, in the form they fill out, the C and the S are both capitalized. Well, that completely changes the grammar of the frickin' the grammar of the sentence. That's in the oath. So it changed the form of the oath. This is the point. It says it has to be done this way, and this isn't the way they did it. So the one they're taking doesn't satisfy this anyways, because somebody changed the wording. Right? I mean, that shit matters. The devil's in the details, and these are the details you dicked with. Okay, so that's what the sheriff needs to do. Well, we kind of need to do the same thing, because it all starts with being a registered, qualified elector of an election precinct, which is now a subdivision of the county. In my case, it's the 4th district of Kent County, but they won't let me register there. Right? And so somewhere in your election law, it's going to talk about registration of electors. Right? And this is where the meat and potatoes. And at the end of the day, because I want to get done with this video, right? Registration of elector. An elector entitled to registration in election precinct may become registered in the precinct by applying in person and signing the registration application before the clerk or assistant clerk of the township, city, village in which the precinct is located. For the performance of his or her duties under this act, each clerk or assistant clerk has the power to administer oaths and swear persons as to the truth of their statement contained in the application. In other words, there's an affidavit in the application, you have to swear to it. Well, you don't do that when you go to register to vote. You just fill out a piece of paper and sign. It's done automatically for you when you get a driver's license. Right? The clerk, immediately after receiving registration or change of address, the elector shall prepare voter identification for the elector. The clerk shall also prepare and send a corrected voter identification card to the elector affected by the change in the United States representative, state senatorial, state representative, or county commissioner, district, or precinct. Right? District or precinct, because the district is a precinct. So it has to have something to do with the county commissioner. And that isn't, which mine's the 4th district county commissioner or commissioner who sits with the rest of the commissioners to make up the, county commissioners board, which is really a court that, has jurisdiction over the entire county. But this is what we're not allowed to do. So unless you do this, you swear before a clerk to your statement to register as an elector, you have not registered as an elector. And until you're registered as an elector, your vote doesn't count for an election. It may count for a popularity contest, but not for electing anybody. And this is why they can make up these numbers for how many votes Joe Biden got and so forth, because none of those votes count anyways. None of those people is 81 million, or any of the people that voted for Trump, or God knows how many actually voted for Biden. None of those people have actually registered as an elector in their election district, right? Or let's just say a very small percentage has, and they're not telling us who they are. Well, we can guess who they are. They're the ones that are in charge of the Democratic and Republican parties, which are both, that it started out as the Democratic Republican Party in the early 1800s. Then the Republican Party dropped off. They became the Whigs. The Whigs went around for a while, came back as Republicans, and now you got what looks like these two different parties fighting each other, but they're just both sides of the same coin. It's worked for a long time, and we've been a victim of their system that's run by esquires, and that's why, as a constitutional sheriff, man, you just got to get past that and, arrest that esquire, put his ass in a fucking holding cell until he starts talking. Busted. Them people are afraid of everything, man. They live in fear. What they fear worse is what they do to others. Okay, we're almost done, so hang in with me. So, what do you do to fix it? Well, I haven't read this whole thing, but there is an Emergency Interim Executive Succession Act passed in Michigan, right, that is supposed to be used when people who are supposed to have power don't have power. So this is how it could be resolved. But, this is the secondary thing. First, we have to point out that the fucking shit happened. And that would come under the power of the Emergency Management Act, right? An act to provide for planning, mitigation, response, and recovery from natural and human-made disaster within and outside the state, to create a Michigan Emergency Management Advisory Council, prescribe powers and duties to certain state, local agencies, officials, so forth and so on. Okay, and so what we need to know, because we're talking about the county, is, well, what does the chief executive official needs? In the case of a county, with an elected county executive, it's the county executive. But if you don't have an elected county executive, then it's the chairperson of the county board of commissioners or the appointed administrator designated by appropriate enabling legislation. Well, we just saw, like, the sheriff is an administrator board, he's on the administrator board of 911, so, he's an administrator. And I think that's what they did, that the sheriff actually is this person they're talking about, appointed as an administrator. And goes on to describe what these things are. Right? Emergency means an occasion or instance in which the governor determines state assistance is needed to supplement local effort or capability to save lives, protect property, public health, safety, or lessen avert threat and catastrophe in any part of the state. Well, I'm sure these are the powers they use to create the COVID circumstances. We'll just do it under, right, emergency management. The emergency management coordinator means a person appointed pursuant to this section. We'll have to look at that in a minute. It includes civil defense. Emergency management coordinator includes a civil defense director, civil defense coordinator. Well, we saw that the sheriff, he can have a job in civil defense, right? So he could easily be the person appointed according to Section 9. Political subdivision means a county, municipality, Okay, so, right, we saw that the Constitution said that a county is a body corporate, and this says a political subdivision, which is then a body politic, is the county. So the county is both a body politic and a body corporate, which is the same as a municipality. So, of course, most of this, applies to the governor, because it would normally be the governor's duty, but we don't have a governor. We have an imposter, right? But there is a place to start this at the local level in the county, which is powers of county and municipality, right? What are their powers, right? Declare a local state of emergency if circumstances within the county or municipality indicate that an occurrence or a threat of widespread severe damage, injury, or loss of life or property from natural or human-made causes exists, and under a declaration of local state of emergency, issue directives as to travel restrictions on county roads. This power shall be vested in the chief executive official of the county. Who did we see that was? I'd go back and look, right? The county executive or the chairman of the board of commissioners or whoever they appointed. Right? That person is the one that can pick the phone up and call in the frickin' emergency. I'm just saying, well, I bet it's the sheriff. You know, he puts on his other hat. Right? Or the official designated by the charter. And shall not be continued or renewed for a period in excess of 7 days without the consent of the governing body of the county or municipality. The declaration of a local state of emergency shall be promptly filed with the Emergency Management Division of the department, unless circumstances attendant upon the disaster prevent or impede its prompt filing. Well, let's find out if they're going to file it or not, because once you make a record of it in this gold fringe jurisdiction we're talking about, well, now they got to deal with it, right? We're not going through the governor, we're going around the governor, because the governor isn't there. So here's this emergency and disaster declaration process. It explains how it's supposed to happen in Michigan, right? The Michigan Emergency Management Act outlines emergency management process, talks about how it's done, but really what I want to show this for was, all right, let's look at the hierarchical structure of Michigan's emergency management system. Right? There's a local emergency management. Then we go to the state police. They've got district coordinators. Then we got emergency management, homeland security. Well, now we're into federal territory. Right? State director of emergency management, which is the state police, the governor, FEMA, then the president. Right? So this is a open door policy for these people in this line right here, all the way up to the president. Right? To get something done. But what has to happen first is it has to be put in. And so that's why I think it's put in through 911. That's how you inform emergency management of the problem. And then they look at the problem and say, wow, this is much bigger than we can handle. We need to file for emergency, a state of emergency. And that rallies all the troops and gets the flag, the gold fringe flag, coming in with federal troops to straighten up the situation. Or whatever needs to be done through FEMA. One final thing I hadn't talked about yet, this is terrorism, which is also covered under emergency management, homeland security, where they have this thing they call a certified act of terrorism, right? And it's defined in the act, which is under the Terrorism Risk Insurance Act. Right? What's a certified act of terrorism? Act means an act that is certified by the Secretary of Treasury in consultation with the Secretary of Homeland Security and the Attorney General of the United States to be an act of terrorism. Right? To be a violent act or an act that is dangerous to human life, property, infrastructure, to have resulted in damage within the United States or outside the United States in the case of certain air carriers or vessels or the premise of United States mission, and to have been committed by an individual or individuals, that'd be a conspiracy, as part of an effort to coerce the civilian population of the United States or to influence the policy or affect the conduct of the United States government by coercion. So that judge, that black robe priest sitting there impersonating a state officer is an act of terrorism. And because of that, it should be covered. It should be certified as an act of terrorism. And then you could collect the terrorism risk insurance, which is like $5 million, from their policy. Right? Because that person there has to have some kind of liability insurance. Right? So he's the one who took taking the risk. We got errors and omissions insurance. It's time to pay up. He could have been elected. He could have filled the paperwork out. He could have been properly seated. All right, he could have the proper oath of office. He could have all these things, but he didn't. That's not my fault. It's his. It's an act of fucking terrorism against me in the United States because he's going to affect the revenue of the United States by taking it from me. Right? Because they don't ever do their paperwork right. They're not turning this stuff over to the United States. It's all going into these funds that's being invested. Right? We all know that. It's not transferring through to the United States the part that should be the United States. So that's infringing on the United States revenue, and that should get the IRS all over them. Very good. I think I covered it all. All right, and finally, I want to be sure I showed this, right? Because whether the constitutional sheriff does something or not, we'll have to find out. But for the rest of us, right? If you're in court right now, you are being deprived of rights under color of law. Well, that is a violation of the Criminal Code of the United States, 18 U.S.C. 242. Right? Forget the other section. I think it's Title 42 something or other. Right? That's not criminal. This is criminal. And this is an emergency. The other shit's not an emergency. This is the same problem that Sergeant Leaf is having when he decided to go and try to sue the Attorney General. What you're charging them with is a crime. So you can't sue them civilly. You have to charge them with a crime. But that isn't what he did. He didn't fill out a criminal complaint. Instead, he's trying to sue them in the fictitious court, pretending to be the court of Michigan, and it ain't ever going to work. Right? So whoever under color of any law, statute, ordinance, regulation, or custom, willfully subjects any person in any state, territory, commonwealth, possession, and district deprivation of any rights, privileges, or immunities, right? You're being denied your equal protection of the law by this, protected by a constitution or laws of the United States, or to different punishment, pains, penalties, account of such person being an alien, or by reason of his color or race, than are prescribed for punishment of all citizens, prescribed for the punishment of citizens, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 1 year or both. If the dangerous weapon, explosive fire shall be fined under It goes on and on and on. Anyways, it's good enough. Right? You're being deprived of your rights under color of law. You could also say it's conspiracy against rights. Right? Two or more persons conspire to injure, oppress. Okay, two or more persons. The person the esquire pretending to be the prosecutor, and the esquire pretending to be the judge. That's a conspiracy. Right? Oppress, threaten, intimidate any person in any state, yada, 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 yada. That's all there, right? Everything you need to say, well, it's a crime, and therefore, under the guidelines of 911, which says that an ongoing crime is an emergency, well, you can turn it into 911. Right? Now, what exactly you're going to say, well, you got to think about it a little bit. But, basically, the fact that the people that are pretending to be the prosecutor and judge in your case haven't taken a proper oath of office. So they're not state officers, and it's a conspiracy against your rights in violation of Title 18, United States Code 241. Right? Please come to my relief. Something like that. And I don't think I read these yet, but we should know what civil defense means, because this is what it said. The sheriff could also have an office in civil defense. So since the end of the Cold War, the focus of civil defense has largely shifted from responding to military attack to dealing with emergencies and disasters in general. The new concept is characterized by a number of terms, each of which has its own specific shade of meaning, such as crisis management, emergency preparedness, contingency planning, civil contingency, civil aid, civil protection. It's all the same shit. It's fucking civil defense. Right? United States civil defense refers to the use of civil defense in the history of the United States, which is the organized non-military effort to prepare Americans for military attack and similarly disastrous events. Late in 20th century, the term and practice of civil defense fell into disuse, emergency management and homeland security replaced them. So, right, it's all right there. Natural disasters, emergencies, and new threats such as terrorism have caused attention to be focused away from traditional civil defense and to new forms of civil protection, such as emergency management, homeland security, again and again and again. Okay, that's where we're at. I hope I hear from a constitutional sheriff. 616-712-6179, Sheriff. Let's go get him. All right, talk to you later.